Mist drifted across the forecourt of Buckingham Palace on the morning the senior clan reassembled, summoned by private courier and a single line of instruction. The sealed packet is to be opened in the presence of the family by the Prince of Wales at 10 o'clock. Courtiers who had served 3 sovereigns whispered that they had never known Her late Majesty to leave anything uncharted, yet still they shared the frisson that arises whenever an epoch ends and a new choreography of power is sketched in ink. A tight knot of armed police stood guard at the Privy Purse entrance. An equally tight knot of journalists fidgeted along Constitution Hill, speculating in ever shriller tones about secret fortunes, vindications, punishments, reconciliations. But the real story, the one that would reshape private relationships and public expectations for a generation, unfolded behind oak doors whose hinges had absorbed the confidences of centuries. Prince William eased those doors shut himself. He wore no uniform, only a dark lounge suit, and the expression of a man who recognizes the weight of a moment before it is publicly named. On a polished bureau rested a thick envelope bearing the device ER in black sealing wax. William broke it, withdrew a sheaf longer than anyone had predicted, and began to read, voice steady, vowels clipped in the manner he had once borrowed from his grandmother. The will of Elizabeth II was never going to be about cash alone. Everyone present knew the Crown Estate sits beyond personal disposal, and that Balmoral and Sandringham, though technically private, are repositories of national memory. Yet within 5 paragraphs, the Prince's listeners realized they were hearing a blueprint, a redistribution of objects, of responsibilities, of tacit hierarchies, each clause calibrated to guide the monarchy's next half-century. The first surprise concerned residences. Contrary to family chatter that Balmoral would descend entire to King Charles, the late Queen directed that the castle itself and its immediate deer park remain at the King's disposal, while 3 satellite lodges, Birk Hall aside, Glen Muick, lodge and garden cottage among them, were to enter a trust chaired by Prince William and Princess Anne. The trust's charter obliges them to open the lodges for charitable retreats every autumn, so that servicemen and women injured in body or mind may recuperate where the air is crisp and the hills are kind. A deliberate nod to the Duke of Cambridge's veterans' work, the clause also places Anne, long the family's hardest-working lieutenant, in equal charge, an elegant gesture that binds 2 generations to a joint philanthropic duty. Clause 9 pivoted to the art that Elizabeth considered utterly personal, distinct from the royal collection held in trust for the nation. Works by Rembrandt, Vermeer, Monet, and a private trove of Norman Hartnell fashion sketches were listed, not with market values but with handwritten notes of how each had come into her possession. The Rembrandt self-portrait, bought by George, Faas on wartime credit to keep it from vanishing abroad, is to hang at Marlborough House until the Duchess of Edinburgh's death, and thereafter at an inner-city art school of William's choosing. 2 Vermeer studies, doubtless worth 9-figure sums, will pass to Princess Charlotte and Prince Louis respectively, to remind them that stillness and light outlive clamor. Such granular allocations confounded those who assumed the whole cash would land in Kensington Palace vaults. They also obliquely solved the old question of how younger Windsor children might inherit something meaningful without diluting the Crown's exhibition caliber. Then came the jewelry. Every royal watcher expected fierce debate over the Vladimir tiara, the Cambridge lover's knot, Queen Mary's Dorset bow brooch, and the peerless Cullinan 3 stones set as a brooch. William read slowly. The Vladimir, with its interchangeable emerald and pearl drops, is bequeathed to Catherine because she steadies a room as surely as my mother once did. The lover's knot remains at Charles's disposal for the use of the future Princess of Wales, whoever she may be, signaling that Charlotte might one day wear it. Camilla retains the Greville honeycomb tiara she wears most often and receives Queen Victoria's sapphire cluster to cement her role as senior consort. The Cullinan brooch, astonishingly, is left in trust for Lilibet Diana Mountbatten Windsor upon her 21st birthday, conditional on her maintaining British citizenship, an olive branch across the Atlantic, and a statement that blood counts, even when addresses change. Legalistic pages followed, codicils confirming that share portfolios managed under the Sandringham settlement pass intact to the sovereign for life. Cash holdings from racehorse winnings divide 40% to the Prince of Wales's Earthshot Endowment, 20% to Princess Anne's Save the Children Fund, and slender slices to each great-grandchild into capped education trusts. But it was the personal mementos that drew sharp breaths. A battered leather blotter used by the Queen at Sandringham, while as princess in 1951 is left to Prince Harry, in memory of the first telegram I ever sent outside protocol. To Andrew she leaves an 1827 Bible, with affection, and in hope, of reflection. Sarah, Duchess of York, receives one of Queen Victoria's hand-painted silk fans for her kindness to my corgis. Even staff appear. Angela Kelly, dressmaker and confidant, inherits the Queen's Cairngorm set silver brooch. Paul Wybrew, the 6-foot butler who walked her corgis, gains the vintage Aston Martin once driven around the Balmoral estate. Every bequest is a miniature conversation, sparing William the pain of deciding later which cousin gets what. The room shifted when William reached the educational codicil. Elizabeth instructs that a new scholarship be established in her name, funded with $12 million from a discretionary fund previously invisible even to senior courtiers, to send 2 Commonwealth students annually to study constitutional law at Cambridge, Oxford, or Edinburgh. The rationale, scrawled in the Queen's italic script: a realm's future is best served when its servants understand both written and unwritten rules. The trustees, the Princess Royal, Baroness Scotland, and unexpectedly Meghan, Duchess of Sussex, if she so wishes. Gasps were audible. William paused, then continued. Should the Duchess decline, the Trust will invite another Commonwealth woman of mixed heritage who has served as an advocate for women's education. It was perhaps the most direct signal that the late sovereign intended reconciliation to outlive her. Yet the will's truly seismic clause dealt not with jewels, nor estates, nor bursaries, but with a single institution: Buckingham Palace itself. Elizabeth directs that, by 2030, the private apartments currently reserved for the monarch be permanently opened as a museum wing, with future sovereigns maintaining residences at Windsor, Sandringham, and Clarence House, or such premises as the Crown Estate shall adapt. The palace would remain the administrative seat and ceremonial HQ, but no longer a family home. The line topples a century of domestic precedent and implicitly accepts that a modern monarchy may occupy fewer square meters of prime London real estate without diminishing mystique. For William, already known to weigh a move toward Windsor, in his eventual reign, the instruction carries both relief and logistical headache. Where will investitures, state visits, balcony appearances be staged? The will is silent. It simply says, let flexibility be the virtue of the coming age. By the time he folded the final page, more than an hour had passed. Faces around the long table, the Waleses, the Edinburghs, Princess Beatrice, Lady Louise, the Dukes of Kent and Gloucester, registered mingled wonder, anxiety, hurt, and, in some cases, quiet gratification. Charles, seated opposite his elder son, nodded once. Inheritance had been settled by a woman who understood the value of doing the job herself. William cleared his throat and invited the Lord Chamberlain to witness signatures for probate. Cameras would eventually record only a bland communique. Her late Majesty's personal estate has been dealt with privately in accordance with the law. But behind that blandness, tectonic plates had shifted. Outside the palace, journalists had little to go on beyond whispers and the sudden appearance of the Archbishop of Canterbury, who smiled thinly and left by a side door. Television anchors speculated about disinheritance, about emeralds flying to Montecito by courier, about Andrew losing every penny. They were half wrong, half right. No one was cut off entirely, but no one could miss the moral undercurrent. William drove back to Kensington Palace in an electric Audi, the original envelope tucked in a red box. Catherine met him at the door. Aides saw them stand quietly in the hallway for several minutes before disappearing upstairs, perhaps to telephone palace lawyers, perhaps simply to breathe. In the weeks that followed, practicalities crystallized. Balmoral trust paperwork was lodged at Company's House listing both Anne and William. Clarence House briefed that Buckingham Palace's East Wing refurbishment would pivot to gallery-grade humidity standards. Sotheby's experts were summoned, discreetly, to appraise minor watercolors earmarked for Commonwealth embassies. The Daily Telegraph revealed that the Vladimir tiara had undergone fresh insurance valuation exceeding $110 million. The Mirror insisted it would dress Catherine at the next state banquet. Both might prove true. Politically, the most potent outcome was the scholarship. Foreign Office mandarins recognized its potential to mollify Republican murmurs in Caribbean realms. Commonwealth leaders welcomed the signal that a royal legacy would help train legal scholars in Nairobi or Bridgetown, rather than solely gild London. Meghan issued a one-sentence statement through Archewell. The Duchess of Sussex is honoured by the late Queen's thoughtfulness and will reflect on how best to support the scholarship's aims. Whether she accepts trusteeship remains unknown. The invitation alone rewrote months of acrimony. For William, the internal calculus is more personal. He now controls hundreds of millions in land and art, yet is legally bound to share certain lodges. Jewels, even decisions about Buckingham Palace with relatives and arm's-length governance boards. The will essentially codifies his grandmother's conviction that monarchy thrives when decentralized, no single person hoarding all the glitter.
It also ties his reputation to projects he did not initiate.
If the Balmoral lodges fall into disrepair or the scholarship lapses, critics will blame him, not the ghost of Elizabeth II. Why did the late Queen entrust the reading to her grandson rather than her eldest son? Those versed in Windsor psychology cite symbolism. Charles reads laws, William reads the future. Elizabeth knew the public already associates her son with continuity. She wanted observers, and her own relatives, to see the next generation take textual command. Another pragmatic factor. William's measured tone, cultivated since childhood, carries enough royal gravitas to quiet a room without sounding cold. And perhaps she wished to gift her heir-in-waiting a final tutorial. Nothing teaches responsibility like hearing every relative inhale sharply as you recite their fate. The monarchy now progresses along the path she drew. Charles stewards. Camilla supports. William and Catherine shoulder enlarged portfolios. Anne provides the moral metronome. Andrew remains publicly sidelined but privately tethered by that Bible and a gentle admonition. Harry and Meghan hover across an ocean, under the scholarship's umbrella, and in vaults beneath Windsor, a Rembrandt self-portrait, 2 Vermeers, 300 years of correspondence, and a brooch nicknamed Granny's Chips. Wait for the day their new custodians must decide which gallery wall, which state occasion, which granddaughter's wedding they will grace. For historians, the document confirms what courtiers long suspected. Elizabeth II mastered the art of soft power to the very end. She left no detonations, only disciplined nudges, yet those nudges reshape architecture, finance, diplomacy, and memory. Prince William, having spoken her words aloud, now carries their echo. His reign, whenever it comes, will unfold inside. A house his grandmother designed, smaller, lighter, more porous, still undeniably royal. And if on some misty Norfolk morning a veteran injured in distant conflict wakes in Glenmuick Lodge and glimpses a red deer on the heather, he will be living proof that a will can be more than a pile of possessions. It can be a living policy, signed by a monarch who understood that true legacy lodges in what remains useful after the majesty is gone.